It is your second bathroom trip tonight, maybe your third. You stop ordinary drinking 2 to 3 hours before bed, empty your bladder just before sleep, and expect fewer awakenings. That can help. Stopping at dinner time sounds even more effective, but it often is not, because severe fluid restriction cannot stop urine being created by high glucose, obstructed breathing, or fluid returning from your legs. So before you blame the final glass of water, measure what comes out. A full or nearly full void points toward excessive nighttime urine production. Repeated small amounts point toward limited bladder capacity, incomplete emptying, or obstruction. Same number of trips, completely different problem. Your immediate target is to get below 2 disruptive awakenings when possible. 2 or more is the level generally considered clinically meaningful because sleep becomes repeatedly fragmented. In older adults, nocturia is also associated with more falls. A systematic review estimated that, at age 65, the absolute annual risk of falling was about 5.5 percentage points higher among people with nocturia. That is an association, not proof that urination caused every fall. But walking half awake in darkness certainly does not improve the situation. For 2 to 3 days, keep a frequency volume journal. Use a measuring container, record the time and approximate amount of every void, and note when you went to sleep and when you finally got up. Also note the evening meal, later snacks, alcohol, caffeine, fluid timing, ankle swelling, loud snoring, gasping, morning headaches, weak flow, urgency, and the feeling that you did not empty completely. This is not busy work. The International Continence Society specifically uses a bladder diary to quantify nocturia and nighttime urine production. For the nighttime total, include what you passed during the sleep period and the first morning void, because much of that first morning urine was produced while you slept. Emptying your bladder just before bed gives the journal a cleaner starting point. Track 5 things: awakenings, volume at each trip, the nighttime share of your full day urine, next day energy, and the clues surrounding the episode. Memory tends to compress 4 tired bathroom visits into one miserable blur. The journal separates them. Suppose you wake 3 times and pass a substantial amount each time. Your bladder may be functioning perfectly well. It filled, signaled, and emptied. The problem is that your kidneys kept filling it during hours, when your body should have been conserving more water. Now suppose you wake 3 times, but pass only a small amount, with a hesitant stream and lingering fullness. That pattern does not fit simple overproduction. Your functional capacity may be reduced because the bladder is irritable, its muscle behavior has changed, or the outlet is obstructed, and the bladder begins the night partly full. And yes, you can have both patterns at once. For adults over 65, a commonly used screening benchmark for nocturnal polyuria is more than 1/3 of the full 24-hour urine volume being produced during the main sleep period. If you produce roughly 3 quarts across the full day, for example, a little more than 1 quart at night crosses that benchmark. It is not a magical biological boundary, and the International Continence Society notes that the traditional percentage has limitations. But it is far more informative than assuming every nighttime trip is prostate trouble. Some clinical series have found nocturnal overproduction in a very large share of people presenting with nocturia, with upper estimates approaching 88%. That is not a universal prevalence. It does explain why treating the prostate alone may leave the nighttime volume unchanged. The first place to reconstruct a large volume night is dinner. If blood glucose rises markedly, the kidneys filter more glucose. Normally, they reclaim nearly all of it. At sufficiently high concentrations, that reabsorption system cannot keep up. Glucose spills into the urine, water follows it, and urine volume rises. This is osmotic diuresis. The exact renal threshold varies between people and changes with kidney function, age, and medication use. Clinically obvious glucose spilling becomes more likely when blood glucose is severely elevated, often around 250 milligrams per deciliter or above. An ordinary dessert does not automatically drive you there. A massive refined carbohydrate load is more concerning when glucose regulation is already impaired, especially if the night also includes unusual thirst, frequent large voids, or large urine volumes during the day. Diabetes and nocturia are associated at the population level. A systematic review covering nearly 200,000 participants found about 1.49 times the odds of nocturia among people with diabetes. That does not prove diabetes caused one man's bathroom trip, but it gives a high volume pattern with thirst and glucose clues a clear direction for evaluation. There is also a slower pathway. Insulin has an anti-natriuretic effect, meaning it can encourage the kidneys to retain sodium. Water follows retained sodium. During the upright part of your day, some of that fluid may collect lower in the body and return to circulation after you lie down. Insulin is not the body's only sodium regulator, and one carbohydrate meal does not explain all leg swelling. This is a contributing pathway, not permission to label every potato a urinary emergency. The kidney is a little more sophisticated than that. The first correction is therefore specific. Remove the massive evening glucose load before you remove water your body needs. Keep the dinner inside the established noon eating window. Make it a normal meal rather than a late carbohydrate event, and close the kitchen afterward. Protein, fiber-rich vegetables, and minimally processed foods can reduce the size and speed of the glucose load compared with a large serving of refined starch, followed by sweets and grazing. The objective is not zero carbohydrate. It is avoiding a dose and timing combination that your glucose control may no longer handle well. A short, comfortable walk after dinner can also help muscles use circulating glucose, while the calf muscles assist fluid movement out of the lower legs. Judge the result over several nights using volume and awakenings, not merely by how virtuous dinner felt. When Tom's brain aneurysm was found by a specialist at 57, we had to rethink his health together. We studied meal timing, insulin, fasting, sleep, and the patterns that had gradually become normal for him. He is 65 now, and the changes we built together became the Noon Reset Protocol, his 30-day digital guide for gradually shifting meal timing toward fasting until noon, with daily explanations and tracking rather than supplements or calorie counting. If that structured approach fits what you are trying to change, the link is below the video. Now back to your journal, because a better dinner can produce a very useful false victory. Your first nighttime void becomes smaller. Perhaps one trip disappears. Yet you still wake at nearly the same times, and only then notice the urge. That sequence matters. If you became awake before your bladder demanded attention, the bathroom may have become something you do during an awakening, not the original reason you awakened. After 50, one of the most important causes of that pattern is obstructive sleep apnea, particularly when abdominal weight, loud snoring, witnessed pauses, gasping, dry mouth, morning headache, resistant blood pressure, or heavy daytime sleepiness accompany the nocturia. During an obstructive apnea, the upper airway closes while the chest keeps trying to inhale. Pressure inside the chest becomes strongly negative. That changes the pressure around the heart and stretches the right atrium. The heart interprets part of that mechanical signal as excessive central fluid volume and releases atrial natriuretic peptide. Related cardiac signals, including B-type natriuretic peptide, may also participate. These hormones tell the kidneys to excrete sodium. Water follows the sodium. So the airway closes, the chest strains, the heart sends a volume signal, and the kidneys make more urine. At the same time, repeated oxygen drops and arousals disturb the normal nighttime pattern of antidiuretic regulation. Vasopressin normally helps your kidneys conserve water during sleep. In apnea, that circadian water conservation system may be disrupted. The better supported human explanation is the combined effect of airway obstruction, negative chest pressure, cardiac natriuretic signaling, hypoxia, arousal, and altered nighttime regulation. This changes what the symptom means. You may not be waking because urine interrupted healthy sleep. The breathing event may wake you and promote the production of urine at the same time. Once awake, you notice a bladder that has been filling more quickly and go to the bathroom. Restricting water cannot reopen an obstructed airway. Formal sleep assessment is therefore the second major correction when the journal shows large voids alongside apnea clues. Treatment with continuous positive airway pressure reduces nocturia for some people with obstructive sleep apnea. Earlier pooled studies found fewer nighttime voids and lower nighttime urine volume after treatment, although the studies were small and responses were not universal. A more recent systematic review still describes the relationship as important, but notes that the treatment evidence remains incomplete. The meaningful outcome is not just one fewer trip. It is less fragmented breathing, more continuous sleep, better next-day alertness, and reduced cardiovascular strain from repeated obstructive events. Nocturia can improve downstream, but it is not the only reason the sleep problem matters. The legs then explain why the first large void often appears relatively early in the night. While you are upright, gravity raises pressure in the veins of the lower legs. Fluid can move into the surrounding tissue, especially with long-sitting, venous insufficiency, higher sodium intake, some medications, heart or kidney conditions, and reduced calf muscle activity. You may see sock marks or ankle fullness by evening. Pressing the shin may leave a temporary indentation when more substantial fluid is present, but the absence of a dent does not rule out redistribution. When you lie flat, gravity is no longer holding that fluid down. Some returns toward the chest, often with much of the early redistribution occurring within roughly 30 to 60 minutes. Central blood volume rises, the kidneys receive a different circulation signal, and more sodium and water can be filtered. That does not mean every ounce of nighttime urine came from your ankles. It means the glass you drank before bed is only one part of the input. Your body may also be processing fluid consumed earlier, sodium retained across the day, and water that spent the afternoon in lower body tissue. This upward fluid shift can interact with apnea as well. Observational research suggests that fluid moving toward the chest and neck while lying down may contribute to airway narrowing in susceptible people. That finding does not prove that leg fluid causes every apnea event, but it explains why the systems can overlap. The same redistribution may increase kidney output and make nighttime breathing less stable. The third correction changes when fluid and sodium reach the kidneys without sacrificing daytime hydration. Finish ordinary drinks around 2 to 3 hours before bed. Move a salty or especially heavy meal earlier, rather than saving it for late evening. Avoid evening caffeine when it increases urgency or delays sleep. And remember that alcohol can increase urine production while making airway obstruction and sleep fragmentation worse. Empty the bladder immediately before sleep. If your ankles become fuller through the day, use the evening to move that fluid before you enter bed. A comfortable walk, repeated calf contractions, or a period with the legs elevated above heart level can shift some fluid earlier, giving the kidneys a chance to process it before sleep. The purpose is timing, not forcing a dramatic fluid dump. If you take medication that deliberately increases urinary glucose or urine output, the timing and volume pattern may reflect the intended pharmacology. Do not alter prescribed medication in response to a homemade theory. Record the medication and timing so it can be included in the medical assessment. The Noon Reset Protocol is also available as a one-time downloadable 30-day guide if you want daily structure for moving food intake toward the noon window without calorie counting or supplements. It is my husband's system, built from the changes we made together for him, and the link is below the video. The guide supports the metabolic side of this decision. It does not replace investigation of apnea, obstruction, or persistent high-volume urination. Now imagine the timing routine works. You move the salty meal earlier, stop ordinary drinks 2 to 3 hours before bed, walk, elevate your legs, and empty your bladder. The first void shrinks. Good. Then you still wake repeatedly and measure only a few ounces each time. Do not respond by drinking even less. Repeated small voids have moved you into the other physiological bucket. The bladder may be signaling urgency at a low volume. Its muscle, called the detrusor, may contract too readily. Or the outlet may be restricted, so the bladder empties incompletely and begins refilling from a higher starting point. Prostate changes become relevant here. Benign prostatic hyperplasia means non-cancerous microscopic growth of prostate tissue. Benign prostatic enlargement refers to an increase in gland size. Bladder outlet obstruction describes restricted flow. Those conditions overlap, but they are not interchangeable. A man can have histological enlargement without troublesome symptoms, and prostate size alone does not perfectly predict obstruction. When enlarged tissue or smooth muscle tension compresses the urethral outlet, you may notice a weaker stream, hesitancy, stopping and starting, straining, dribbling, or incomplete emptying. The bladder muscle works harder against resistance. Over time, its behavior and structure can change, which may reduce functional capacity even if nighttime production is also elevated. Look 10 years ahead. Population studies in older men suggest average prostate volume can increase by roughly 2 to 2.5% per year. Histological benign enlargement is found in about 80 to 90% of men older than 70 in autopsy studies, but that does not mean the same percentage has obstruction or severe symptoms. Meanwhile, glucose regulation may worsen, abdominal weight can increase apnea risk, and leg circulation may become less efficient. If you answer every new bathroom trip by cutting more water, you can preserve the symptom while overlooking the processes that are changing underneath it. You may also enter the day underhydrated, tired, and less steady, which is the opposite of preserving your options. If this kind of practical health investigation helps you make better decisions after 50, I would be grateful if you subscribed. Your completed journal now makes the choice much simpler. Large nighttime volumes plus unusual thirst, heavy evening glucose exposure, daytime frequency, or high glucose readings place glucose correction and proper metabolic testing first. Improve the evening load within the noon eating pattern, then see whether measured nighttime production changes. Persistent extreme thirst or high volume output is not a reason for a more aggressive diet experiment. It requires prompt clinical evaluation. Large volumes plus snoring, witnessed breathing pauses, gasping, morning headaches, sleepiness, or difficult to control blood pressure, place sleep assessment near the front. If apnea is present, treating the airway addresses a mechanism that fluid timing cannot touch. Large early night volumes, plus ankle fullness, long periods of sitting, a salty late meal, alcohol, caffeine, or heavy late drinking make the timing routine a strong immediate layer. Preserve hydration earlier in the day. Finish ordinary drinking 2 to 3 hours before bed. Shift sodium earlier. Mobilize the legs and empty the bladder before sleep. Repeated small volumes, weak flow, hesitancy, or incomplete emptying keep prostate and bladder assessment central. The issue may be reduced capacity, overactivity, obstruction, or a mixture. More water restriction does not increase bladder capacity or empty residual urine. Many men will have a mixed journal. Dinner changes reduce total volume, apnea treatment reduces awakenings and natriuresis, and bladder or prostate management addresses the small voids that remain. Partial improvement is not confusing once you know which variable moved. The safest order for a high-volume pattern is to correct an excessive evening glucose burden first, because marked hyperglycemia can generate urine directly and signals a broader metabolic problem. Investigate apnea next when the clues fit, because the airway, heart, and kidneys may be participating in the same event. Use fluid, sodium, caffeine, alcohol, and leg fluid timing from the first night as low-risk support, not as a substitute for the first two. For a low-volume pattern, that hierarchy changes. Production fixes may remove one trip, but impaired emptying or low functional capacity remains the governing problem. That is the point where the journal has done its job, and further self-testing should give way to clinical assessment. Blood in the urine, painful urination with fever, new severe side or back pain, or a sudden inability to pass urine requires prompt care. New shortness of breath with substantial leg swelling also changes the situation. Persistent large volume urination with marked thirst needs timely glucose and kidney evaluation rather than prolonged fluid restriction. Tonight, empty your bladder before sleep, finish ordinary drinking 2 to 3 hours beforehand, and record the time and volume of every trip. Continue for 2 to 3 days, then let the measured pattern choose the correction. The goal is not to become better at enduring thirst. It is to find out whether your bladder is holding too little or your sleeping body is producing too much, because the first correct distinction can protect far more than one uninterrupted night, and record the time and volume of every trip. Continue for 2 to 3 days, then let the measured pattern choose the correction. The goal is not to become better at enduring thirst. It is to find out whether your bladder is holding too little or your sleeping body is producing too much, because the first correct distinction can protect far more than one uninterrupted night.